Hamas will be able to fight a very lethal, asymmetrical warfare in the same way as the Afghan resistance and the Iraqi resistance did against a much more powerful military power, the United States. Benjamin Netanyahu has already made it much easier for Hamas to decide about the next option. Hamas has no other option, either surrender or fight to the end. My take on it is that Sinwar will go down in history as a iconic historical figure. In the past day or so, if you read and if you listen to what the Palestinians and Jordanians and other Arabs are saying about Sinwar, they look at the last moment of his life. While he was defiant, he was resisting, he was wearing battle fatigues with a Palestinian kafia, injured, bleeding. Yet when the Israeli drone basically was firing at him, he threw a piece of wood at the drone itself. And many Palestinians are celebrating the courageous stance of Sinwar, the heroic moment that he was defiant to the very last moments of his life. Sinwar's defiance, even at his last dying moment, contrasts sharply with the Israeli narrative, because Israel repeatedly tried to portray him as a cowardly leader, hiding in underground, in bunkers and tunnels, surrounded by Israeli and other hostages. So, in fact, by releasing the drone footage, Israel endeared Yahya Sinwar to millions of Palestinians and Jordanians and other Arabs, because I think his last moment is celebrated by Palestinians to show that Yahya Sinwar was a courageous soldier, fighting along two of his soldiers and dying as a soldier. My take on it is that Sinwar will go down in history, in Palestinian history, as a iconic historical figure. Let's be clear about what Yahya Sinwar's death means for Hamas. I think it's going to take time and effort for Hamas to really replace such a significant operational commander and charismatic leader. His death leaves an operational leadership vacuum on the battlefield. And my take on it, Hamas now faces two major challenges. The first challenge is the leadership. Will Hamas be able to really replace not only Yahya Sinwar, but his second in command, Muhammad al-Daif, and other leaders who have been killed and assassinated by Israel? So the leadership question is extremely, extremely important for Hamas. The second challenge that faces Hamas is whether Hamas will be able to really have arms and ammunition to continue to fight in this prolonged battle. Israel has a stranglehold on Gaza, whether you're talking about in the north or whether you're talking on the Egyptian Palestinian borders, the Philadelphia path. So I think these are the two major challenges. And only when the dust settles on the battlefields, I think we will be able to know whether Hamas will be able to really recover in terms of having really new leaders, a new generation of leaders, and also to be able to really replenish its supplies of arms and ammunition. In terms of really whether Sinwar's death means the end of Hamas, I don't think his death, critical and significant as it is, will mean the end of Hamas or the defeat of Hamas. First of all, what we need to understand is that Hamas has already morphed from a centralized, highly structured organization into really a guerrilla war. Hamas now is waging a guerrilla war all over Gaza, in the north, in central Gaza, in Rafah, and also in the south. So it's no longer really a top-down centralized movement as it used to be. In fact, I mean, look where Israel found Yahya Sinwar by accident. He was really only along with, together with two other assistants or soldiers. What I'm trying to say is that Hamas now is fighting an insurgency, guerrilla warfare-like. So separate units, independent, semi-independent units are basically targeting Israeli forces carrying out attacks without really any kind of centralized top-down leadership. And Hamas will be able to fight a very lethal, asymmetrical warfare in the same way as the Afghan resistance and the Iraqi resistance did against a much more powerful military power, the United States. And secondly, what we need to understand is that Hamas in the past few months has positioned itself to wage a war of attrition against Israel. So Hamas is not really surprised that Muhammad al-Daif or Yahya Sinwar were killed. The truth is both Yahya Sinwar and his second in command were really, dead men walking. They knew exactly that they were going to be killed. It was a matter of time. I don't think they had any life insurance on their life. And even their supporters knew that they were, as many Palestinians say, that they are, each one of them is mashru' shahada, is a martyrdom project. So even though the death of Yahya Sinwar represents a massive military and political blow for Hamas, this does not really mean the end of Hamas. This does not really mean that Hamas is defeated. In terms of the question about where do we go from here, I think what we need to understand is that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, he basically made it very clear that the war goes on, that the only way for the war to end, from his point of view, is for Hamas to surrender, to lay down its arms, and to exit Gaza. So for Benjamin Netanyahu, only total victory, only the crushing, the surrender of Hamas will mean the end of the war. What this really means is that Benjamin Netanyahu has already made it much easier for Hamas to decide about the next option. The next option, Hamas has no other option, either surrender or fight to the end. And what we know about Hamas and its ideology and its philosophy and its worldview, Hamas will fight. Hamas is reeling from these terrible blows from its point of view. That Hamas has been preparing for this moment, like Hezbollah, for many years. They realize this is a very bloody war. This is a very brutal war. This is very cruel war. I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. The Americans and the Israelis are celebrating that the death of Yahya Sinwar means victory for Israel. But I fear it's premature, because this could really go on for years. And also the reason why I don't see any kind of a hostage deal, of a ceasefire, because Benjamin Netanyahu and his coalition have made it very clear they will never, ever leave the Gaza Strip. They have already created a huge buffer zone on the northern Israeli border. And they would like to have the upper hand in Gaza in the same way they have the upper hand in the occupied West Bank. So the reality is, sadly and tragically, the Palestinians will continue to suffer for many months and probably a few years, because this is a long war. This is a prolonged war. And this is becoming more and more of a kind of an insurgency war. And Hamas has already morphed into a guerrilla fighting force. And Hamas, like Hezbollah, will fight asymmetrical warfare against Israel. Their strategy is not to really win on the battlefield. Their strategy is to inflict as much damage and pain on Israeli forces in Gaza and South Lebanon as well.